Welcome back. In today's Making Their Case, does President Obama have a mounting Gitmo problem? The latest complication, the Defense Department official in charge of closing the U.S. prison at Guantanamo Bay, Philip Carter, has resigned.
Now, this, of course, comes just weeks after White House counsel in charge of detainee policy, Greg Craig, announced his resignation. You'll remember just last week, President Obama publicly acknowledged for the first time that Gitmo will not be closed by his self-imposed deadline of January 22nd. And there's controversy over efforts to put professed 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 4 others held at Gitmo on trial right here in New York. And the administration is trying to find the location in the U.S. to house up to 100 terror suspects indefinitely. Here to make their case, liberal blogger Adam Serwer, writing fellow for the American Prospect, also conservative blogger James Richardson, both joining us. He's the communications director for the College Republican National Committee. He also blogs at RedState.com. How are you guys?
Great to be here.
James, let me start with you. Is this a problem for the Obama administration? I mean, first of all, this missed deadline that he actually just set for himself, and also you have a lot of furor over the 9/11 trial and also where to house these detainees.
I think there's very little question that the president has a Gitmo problem. The administration is battling significant headwinds on numerous fronts, the greatest of which is perhaps that Americans, by a margin of 2-to-1, oppose the closure of Guantanamo Bay. Coupling this with the fact that many in the president's own party demand an immediate closure, and the president is left with a serious headache and is forced to do some political calculus that will likely leave the progressive wing of the Democratic Party out in the cold.
Adam, what's your response to that?
I think that this issue is way too often framed as as an issue of personal integrity for the president. Yeah, the president has a Gitmo problem, but the United States of America has a Gitmo problem. I mean, the failure to close this prison is a serious national security issue. Terrorists across the world use Gitmo as a way to recruit people to their cause. I mean, the failure to close the prison really isn't just about the administration not meeting its goal. It's about getting rid of a serious national security liability.
But Adam, even with that said, this administration ran on the campaign of it will close Gitmo. So with all of those things, and I think so many people agree with you that it is America's problem and this is used as a tool by Al-Qaeda and others to recruit, it is this administration's problem because they made this pledge and they must stay committed to it.
I agree with you completely. In terms of the president is responsible for making sure Gitmo is closed, but this isn't just an issue of whether or not Obama is keeping his promise.
Sure.
There's a lot more at stake here.
And James, to that point, you know, you have the Republicans have fought this tooth and nail. What is the Republican plan for Guantanamo? Is it just to have these 200 plus sit there indefinitely?
Well, I think it's certainly a very thorny issue right now, and I don't think really anyone has an idea of what we should do with the prisoners being held at Guantanamo Bay. And certainly the president doesn't either, because when he came into office, his advisors said that the president would begin a symbolic dismantling of the Bush administration terrorist detainee policy, which was to order an immediate closure of Guantanamo on day 1. And that hasn't happened. Well, Adam, and so I think the president doesn't even know what to do.
Adam, let me bring you back to the whole introduction that Jeff and I had for the story, is that you've got 2 people leaving the administration. Greg Craig, there's been a lot of stories out there about the way he was treated by the administration toward the end, and his role became less and less before he even stepped down. And you've got this Philip Carter, the Defense Department official in charge of closing Guantanamo Bay, resigning as well. I mean, is there a cloud hanging over Guantanamo? Did just everyone underestimate the fight, the not in my backyard mentality that would come along with this promise made by President Obama?
Well, I mean, first I'll say that the loss of Greg Craig and Phil Carter is a pretty serious problem for the administration. But I'll also say that one of the big issues is that Congress has politicized this issue. I mean, like closing Guantanamo Bay, John McCain said it needed to be closed. George W. Bush said that it needed to be closed. General David Petraeus said that it needed to be closed. But it's become this partisan issue because Republicans would rather actually score some partisan points on the president than actually close this incredibly bad public relations issue for the United States internationally.
Well, then, Adam, on this topic of the 9/11 trial, I was actually speaking with Mike Sheehan, an NBC News contributor. He's a consultant for us, former counterterrorism official, both with the State Department and the NYPD. He said, in his words, it's outrageous as a security concern to have a trial, which Eric Holder has announced for these 5 men here in New York, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I have great respect for Mr. Sheehan, but I have to disagree. Today in Pakistan, 7 of the Mumbai attackers were arraigned in Pakistani civilian court. This is a country that is currently at war with terrorists in Waziristan. If they can try terrorists in civilian courts, then so can we.
Well, he's saying that Lower Manhattan is already a target for al-Qaeda, and this just sort of puts us on the map in the crosshairs, as he says, even more so.
Well, I don't think it makes any difference. Al-Qaeda, New York is a target for al-Qaeda. It's going to be a target for al-Qaeda regardless.
And James,
arguably, the enhanced security will make things even safer in New York.
We're almost out of time, so James, get in there. You heard Adam's response about Mumbai. If they could do that there, why not here in the greatest country, as we say, in the world?
Well, I really have to take issue with what Adam said in that members of Congress and specifically Republicans were politicizing the closure of Guantanamo Bay and giving the detainees civilian trials. And that's really not what's happening. If it was simply a Republican-Democratic issue where Democrats were on the side of the president and Republicans were in fierce opposition, you wouldn't find a margin of Americans by 2 to 1 opposing the closure of Gitmo.
James Richardson, Adam Serwer, thanks so much for your time, guys.
Thank you very much.
Well, today, 500,000 text messages from 9/11 are being released for the very first time.